Welcome. It's so good to see you. Um, you all know me already. Tiana is new to you, so she will introduce herself. But just really quick, I have been for a long time researching the nature and implications of commercial ed tech platforms. And that basically means that I spend a lot of time digging into privacy policies and terms of service and things like that to understand what's really going on behind the scenes with the ed tech that teachers and students and administrators are using in schools. Um, to my mind, with all of the incredibly important things that are going on in schools right now, the issue of ed tech is right up there. Right up there because it implicates everything. Everything's tied up in it. Privatization, surveillance, deprofessionalization of teachers, pedagogy, equity, governance. It's endless. And also we're in a moment right now, post-COVID and with AI just, on the cusp. It's like, it's just this touch point right now with respect to ed tech. Um, and so much is going on. And then one day I saw Tiana speak, and what I saw was that what's going on in her district in Burke County is that they're thinking so hard about things that a lot of schools, a lot of districts just take for granted. And I wanted to bring her to you because she's so awesome. And I wanted also to be able to have conversations with her to see how a real district with uh, board members, administrators who really care are handling how they're thinking about the kinds of tech that their schools are using and what they're doing, how they're being intentional about it. So on that note, I am going to turn it over to Tiana to introduce herself and to tell you about what's going on in Burke County.
Thank you, Faye. So yes, my name is Tiana. Feel free to call me T, Beachler. I am a professor, a forensic investigator, and a public servant based out of North Carolina. I'm in Burke County. I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada, so that's a little bit of a change. Moved here in 2021. I actually graduate next year with my doctorate in law and policy, so this is kind of up my alley. I earned a master's in law and policy. I currently hold two bachelors in sociology and criminal justice with a master's as well in criminal justice. Um, I am currently serving as the board chair for Burke County's Board of Education. And June 16th of this year, we actually adopted a resolution for our entire district entitled Reduce Screen Use Through Balanced Instruction. And so the gist of that is that we are taking a focused initiative to roll back how we're using tech, how much we're using tech in the classrooms, and what we're using tech for. So just trying to be more mindful of what that would look like. To our knowledge, as far as public school entities, we were one of the first to do so. It's been widely accepted, and it's garnered a lot of interest across the country as well as internationally. I believe we've had conversations with the Victoria State in Australia, as well as a ed company in Indonesia. So we're trying to connect with people all over the country, all over the world, to just start having meaningful conversations about what we want education to look like and what our actual goals are, and where technology kind of falls into that.
And um, one of the things that it seems to me is that tech just kind of moved in, particularly when there were shutdowns. Um,
Mhm.
did did you feel that that was going on in your district?
Absolutely. So I have three kids, and at that time, I had a little that was in kindergarten during COVID. So I have a COVID kindergartner, and he started kindergarten during COVID online. His PE was online, and then when we started to come back in person through in person instruction, he struggled. for the first couple years of his life, people thought he was a mute. He did not know how to communicate, socialize with adults or peers. And we start to see that across the district, widespread from K all the way through 12. And so there was this immediate immersion into technology that I don't think any of us, board all the way down to parents and students, weren't quite ready for. I don't think we received the training for it. You just kind of got a laptop sent home and it was just like, use this to help your student get their assignments and learn. So,
Mm. And so can you tell us a little bit about the resolution?
for sure. So the resolution came about through it was kind of a think tank where we started to notice that students were doing better reverting back to pen and paper. One of my kids were part of that cohort. I have a child with autism, and I had noticed that his instruction through the computers, he would get distracted a lot. They were also tied to a lot of his meltdowns. And so I piloted my kids and said, hey, take them off the screens, give them paper, and let's see what happens. Well, behaviors decreased and their grades shot up. So he was initially a CD student. He shot up to AB honor roll. Same thing with my what was kindergartner starting in COVID. So we wrote this policy with the goal of knowing that we are in a digital age. Some of the instruction we can't get away from computer based, but there are things that I feel, leaned on tech more than we should have. Real world example, I was doing a site visit walking through a school, stopped in a math class. Teachers in the back of the classroom, students are facing forward. There is a YouTube video of a teacher teaching how to solve the math problem while an in-person teacher was just sitting in the back of the class. And I think that's when we as a district said, hold on, we have a big, big problem here. And so that is the intent and essentially what the resolution says is that while we understand that there will be a need for technology in some facets of education K through 12, a lot of this we can pull back, especially when it comes to elementary ed, so K through 5. And that's what we ended up passing. It passed unanimously, and has been implemented as of the beginning of this academic year.
And how's it going?
I'm not going to say everyone was pleased. We did have a few of those who said, I'm not going back to grading 150 papers by hand. So you did have those kind of attitudes, but for the most part, parents were exceptionally happy about it because as a parent myself, my kid would bring home, homework and say, I need to get on Delta Math in order to do my homework. I don't know what Delta Math is, let alone how to log in and what all the acronyms and buttons are. So parents were happy that they were able to actually begin helping their kids with homework again. Teachers were happy because they were missing that hands-on component of teaching. A lot of the tech, especially the programs, were starting to take that place where the kids were getting more screen time than they were actually getting instructional time with their teacher. So we've had a lot of support there. And as far as administration with observations and things like that, they were able to kind of beef up what they were looking for and help get those supports in for teachers who may be struggling, especially with our beginning teacher cohort.
And you have a one-to-one program, is that right, in the district?
Correct. Mhm.
And if I remember correctly, you also have professional education. Um, so in the high schools,
Correct.
the full use of technology for that kind of thing.
Correct. Correct. We do have one-to-one. We started that and never deviated in 2020. However, this year, in the spirit of the resolution, we are no longer allowing any devices, school devices, to go home. So we pull back and curtail a lot of that. A lot of our programs in the high schools, we call them CTE, so career and technical education, do have technological components to it. And for those things, there's not much we can really do. The kids are needing that software to complete their courses and their
Mhm.
programs. But for your core curriculum, we're pulling back as much as we can.
That's so interesting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about platforms because that's
Mhm.
something that I've been digging into quite a bit. And it seems that when people raise concerns about ed tech, the common response is often, well, don't get carried away. Don't overreact. Remember the calculator. Remember when people were really concerned that we were going to introduce calculators to schools and kids wouldn't know how to do math. So calm down. Don't be a Luddite, etc. And I think about that and I think, okay, well, a calculator is really different from the kinds of technology that are being used now, the kind of digital platforms that are being used now in schools.
Absolutely.
So calculator is a one-time purchase. It served a single purpose. It didn't collect student data. It didn't change once it was purchased, and it was completely under the control of the school. And all of those things are not descriptors of modern digital platforms. And they also, if you think about, and I like to do this so that I understand what it is that I'm talking about. When 25 years ago, let's say, when we bought a computer, we would buy software for that computer. I mean, you remember that? Like you'd get the Microsoft suite or whatever, and you'd have to install it. That was more like a calculator, right? Because it wasn't connected to anybody outside of your computer. And now everything is connected. And that has all kinds of implications. So thinking about the kind of programs that we use in our work as faculty and things like Canvas, Microsoft, Zoom, right? Those are all the kinds of digital platforms that are used in K-12 schools, but there are so many more. I mean, if you look at studies of how many and what kinds of digital platforms are used, I mean, they're endless, and a given district could have hundreds, if not even over 1,000 platforms that they're using, which is, I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling. So some examples would be Class Dojo, Google Classroom, Canvas, Kahoot, Google, excuse me, Gaggle is the one I wanted to say, GoGuardian, Naviance, Prodigy, Zern, and YouTube. And again, that's just a handful of examples. And I want to call out YouTube because that's the most widely used program in schools, the most widely used platform. And the things that schools are using these things for are, again, like everything that's done, right? So learning management, curriculum delivery, assessment, communication with students and parents, college advising, supplementary learning, you know, it goes on and on and on. And when you think about using a platform in schools, the way it's often thought about is as a tool that's used for a given purpose. You know, so all those things that I just mentioned, right? You need something for curriculum delivery. You need something for supplementary learning. It's always described as a tool, and I find that really interesting because I think that's at some level marketing, right? That we're led to think of it that way as something really neutral and also very simple. But actually, it's not so simple because underneath this tool thing that you're using for a particular purpose, there's so much more to it. So there's this layer of technical architecture, right? That's the code and the data and the algorithms and the interfaces and the hardware. And then those things shape what kind of use is possible. And then kind of below that, and you know, one of the ways I think about this is, you know, that the image of the iceberg, where you only see the iceberg on top, and then there's, you know, all of this stuff underneath. So as you go deeper, then there's like this layer of political economic relations, the ownership structures, the commercial imperatives, the material resources that power each platform's operations. And the thing is that the vast majority of the platforms that are used are commercial. they're commercially provided, and that's really important because the imperatives that are determining how these things are programmed and eventually how they're used are influenced by commercial imperatives, investor needs, shareholder needs, um, and data collection is inherent to any platform. So as a platform is doing what you think it's doing, like, for example, Kahoot providing gamified study aids, it's also harvesting data about things like student usage patterns and performance data and engagement metrics. And so all of those data that are being collected are valuable assets that platform owners can leverage for their own uses. Um, they can use it to enhance the product by developing new features. So product development is a really important aspect of this whole thing. They can use the data to reinforce their market advantages or monetize through third-party data sharing. And there was one study that was done by Internet Safety Labs in 2022 that found that 96% of the platforms that they studied share personal information. 78% of the time, they were sharing that information with advertising and monetization entities. So there's this real flow of data that we just don't see, but it's happening all the time. And all of the data collection, all of the sharing is done without the knowledge or consent of student or families or educators. And again, it's one of those things that we just don't see. And I don't know how many of you remember when NEPC decided to get off of Facebook. At that time, we were thinking about this kind of thing. And I spoke to a reporter, I think it was from the Wall Street Journal, and she was perplexed as to why schools weren't following us off of Facebook. And and what we discussed was that they just didn't realize, like, you just don't know what the data is being used for. And you think, oh, well, all our families are on Facebook. We should be on Facebook too. Um, Another thing that defines modern digital platforms is this notion of software as a service. So again, it's not like you buy a product like the calculator or the old-fashioned word processing software. Now, software as a service is essentially that, right? You pay rent for it monthly, annually, and the provider takes responsibility for updating the service. And so that's got upsides and downsides. The upside is the product won't become obsolete. You're always getting messages. I got one just as I was logging on earlier that my Word had updated, and so I should restart and update it. So that's great. It's not going to go obsolete. I don't have to buy a new one. But there are all kinds of downsides too. So primarily, the district loses control over changes to the product. And the changes aren't necessarily in the district's interest or in the student's interest or in the teacher's interest. And something that I noticed recently is that the Microsoft 360 that we use at CU Boulder is pushing AI now, right? I don't know how many of you have noticed that, but now I go to get into my email. I had an email from Joe the other day, right? I'm like, get into my email, and what comes up is Copilot. I don't want Copilot. I don't want to be led to use Copilot, particularly when, I mean, I have lots of concerns about that, but I just want to get onto my email. So that's a change that I have no control over. It's not at all for my benefit, and the same kind of thing is going on in K-12 schools. Um, Other downsides, and I'm sure you run into this a lot, T, the staff time and effort spent accommodating to the updates, helping students get used to them, figuring out what to do. There's so much like a switch, like you trying to use a platform for a specific purpose, but then you have to spend so much time just organizing after updates.
Mhm.
Um, there are and technical infrastructure and hardware costs. Um, and then there's like this inability to break up with software that you're committed to. So I know that a lot of districts ran into trouble in 2023 when Google started to charge for storage. Um, I know we had at CU Boulder, we had a whole kind of reorganization when that happened. But like you're stuck with it. It's your system. All your data is there. Becomes really hard to break up. Um, and that kind of change, the kind of change with Copilot, those are things we notice. There are all kinds of other changes that you just don't notice because they're under the surface. For example, who's getting the data that's being collected? That's something you'll never see. So I've been talking a lot. I want to turn it over to you um, to talk about your experience with platforms in your district, and then we thought we would consider some of the governance challenges that come up.
Mhm. Absolutely. We do run into quite a bit. Anyone, it's you can Google it. Last year we had a really big data breach that was widespread throughout the whole state. It impacted K through 12 as well as our higher ed institutions here as well. And it was all data mining. Data mining, I mean, you had kids' social security numbers, parents' social security numbers through their we switch platforms, but it's kind of how you keep attendance, what students are enrolled at what school. Um, and when you're putting that information in, you're thinking you're putting it in for your school. You're not thinking that there's another entity on the other side of that program that's collecting all of that information. Well, we as a state didn't get hacked. The program got hacked, and all of that information went into the dark, dark web. So we as a state had to offer remedies for it because we couldn't tell whose information was out there, what it was being used for. So that's one instance. Second instance that Faith did bring up, that's a great point, is when they decide to update their curriculum. We do not receive notification prior to say this is what we're updating it to. Do you want to opt in, opt out? Um, any of that. It just changes. I want to say about 2 years ago, one of our softwares through our library program for our books went through massive changes. Massive changes. Website was different. There was all kinds of slogans on it. None of us had any clue that this was occurring until we got really nasty calls from parents saying, "Oh my gosh, is this what you guys stand for?" Um, Trying to get that taken down was a nightmare because that's you having to contact the software company and they don't really care. They've already gotten our subscription, we're already under contract. So it provides barriers for us to engage with our community, connect with our community, to create programs that are specific for our area, specific for our state, in compliance with the DPI, Department of Public Instruction's curriculum, the State Board of Education. They're just kind of thrown at you. One that you did bring up is that kind of upsell. So, how many of you guys are familiar with Class Dojo?
I am.
Okay. Sweet. So that is the mode of communication in our district. I can't stand the thing. I have two kids in the system. It's all linked. It's very confusing. I'm the board chair. I can't figure it out. But anytime I want to go in there and see the message that my kid's teacher left for me, I have to go through no less than four upsells. How about you buy this? How about you buy that? Here, I'll log in if I can. just for you to see. Let me log out and then log in. I can't just go in and see them. And again, I have two kids that are on that are considered EC exceptional children. So I could be getting a message about anything. So this is the first. Oh, I don't know if so that's the first one. Can't get in. I have to get started. Here we go. It's trying to, oh, you guys can't see it. It's trying to get me to sign up for an annual $50 um plan. Your child's best year starts now. Unlock comprehensive reports, unlimited photo, video access, and home feedback points. I don't want it. Nope, there it is. It pops up another one. So for parents doing this, you're getting upsold all the time. For those who may not understand or know, they may think this stuff is critical, required. How much money are they put into it that we've already as a district put into it? It's just really convoluted, and I think that it helps diminish that communication, that relationship building that is essential in education between the community, the family, and the school district personnel, be it the teacher, the principal. I can't have cell phones. We are currently working on a policy. I already told the district if we can't get our cell phone policy in order this year, I'm moving towards an all-out total ban next year. Um, because while the kids are, I can't stand Google. Google's another one. We use Google Classroom. A lot of the times the kids have the classroom pulled up. However, they're instant messaging. So they're not getting any of the curriculum that's being taught. They're still they're texting just on the computer. So how much are these programs actually helping as opposed to hindering? Um, I have the retort. Well, Tiana, it helps with assessments. We can know instantly where a student is struggling. How true is that? Sure, student may have failed the assessment, but do you know where or what component they are struggling with? Take math, for example. He got that problem wrong. Is it that he forgot how to break down PEMDAS, or is it something else? You don't know through an assessment, as opposed to if they were working it out on paper, you as the instructor can see, okay, you got lost in this step here. Um, I understand that they want to say that it's a tool, and in some instances, very few, in my opinion, on a day-to-day basis, is it useful as opposed to a hindrance? Because not only are you having to learn the software yourself, we have close to 100 here in Burke County alone. You have to teach the kids how to use it. You have to teach the parents how to use it. All of that is missed instructional time, in my opinion. You know, so it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And that's kind of where we're stuck with it. And trying to get out of the contracts are horrendous. It really is. It's really hard to. Once you're stuck with it, you're kind of stuck with it. Um, and they get more expensive every single year. So just throwing money down the drain, in my opinion.
And when you say it's hard to get out of the contracts,
Mhm.
um, what part of it is hard? Is it like dealing with the company? Is it just
Dealing with the
that
company,
you're like sunk cost
dealing with the
into
company 100%. If I wanted to say, you know what, I'm done with Class Dojo. It's not as simple as, okay, well, let's click the unsubscribe button. No, they're going to send people from headquarters down and they're going to continue to try to talk to you. And well, let's cut the price by 50% to try to maintain your business. Well, let me tell you what we have unrolling next year. It's a lot of no's and no and no, 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 no. And when you get to the 20th no, they'll finally let you cancel the subscription. So it's really difficult. It's time consuming.
Mm,
I'm just not a fan. I'm really not.
yeah, I get it. Um, it sounds like when you try to give up a credit card or something,
Mhm.
and then they keep coming back with offers and offers. And I mentioned that I spent a lot of time reading terms of service. And it always says, that the district can get out of the contract as soon as possible, or whenever it wants. Another thing that the privacy policies will say is that you can have your data deleted um, if you want. Just talk to your district. Have you run into that, or is that not at your level?
I'm going to be honest with you. I work very closely with our IT and curriculum development department. I'm not even sure if we know how to delete. permanently, totally delete information out of these systems. Could we delete it on the surface? Sure. But is it really deleted? You really never know. As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, I'm not trying to take it back to, the old days, but if I shredded a paper, that paper was gone. You just don't know with apps now.
Mm-hmm.
There's always that question.
Yeah. You're hitting on something that's like near and dear to my heart. Um, I have been trying to figure that out, right? Because it says, I looked at some contracts. I was looking at Zern and Kahoot,
Mhm.
and both of those in their privacy policies say, "Oh, the district's finished. You just have to tell us, and we'll permanently delete the data, securely delete the data." And when I asked, so what does permanently delete mean? What does securely delete mean? Um, I kind of got a runaround.
Mhm.
The people at CERN were forthcoming and they said, well, we de-identify the data.
Mhm.
So basically, we have it. We just, take the kids' names off and identifying information. But if you know anything about data, you know that you can easily re-identify. So that doesn't really reassure me. And at the same time, all those data are still available for product development and marketing purposes and so forth. And this is fully legal. They're not
Mhm.
doing anything illegal,
Mhm.
but this is what's happening. And when I asked Kahoot about deleting data, I got a response that said, well, here's what you do to go in and securely delete your data. And I said, no, 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 I don't want to know how to do it. I want to know what happens to the data. What are you doing to delete the data? And I got ghosted. And I kept emailing, I still want to know what happens to the data. Nothing, you know. So that's like kind of the two sides
Mhm.
of this phenomena.
Mhm.
Um, One thing that you had mentioned when we spoke a few weeks ago were governance challenges. Um, so you were asking things like, with thousands of digital products available, who decides what's appropriate? How do we ensure
Mhm.
that we're not overwhelming students and teachers? Um, should there be limits? So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
For sure. So where we're at, we have a Department of Public Instruction, we have a state superintendent, and we have a state board of education. They all kind of intersect, but they're separate entities. And these are the bodies that kind of determine and make strong recommendations on what software and programs we are to use at the local educational unit level. And there's very little autonomy given to the local districts as to what that looks like. Well, we don't want to use this one. We found this outsourced one. Oh, someone local made this. Um, Trying to obtain or secure or contract with that information is really difficult because the level of where these decisions are being made is so high. They're in the capital. They're not talking to us. They're not talking to us lowly boards of education about what we think is best for our district after having conversations with our personnel. So governance is just kind of out of sight, out of mind. We don't know how these decisions are being made. We don't know why this specific provider was chosen. This is just the strongly recommended list of who we suggest you use for English supplement, history supplement, um, science supplement. And from there, if we do run into problems, could we try to switch apps, curriculum development? Sure. Are they removed from the list? No. And so we're all being kind of forced to uniformly use these apps when our populations are very diverse. The students you see in the mountains aren't the same students you see in the Piedmont, which aren't the same students you see in on the coast. The teachers themselves are different in the mountains than they are from the coast. And we're all being forced to fit into this square peg, and use the same curriculum. There's an equity problem with that. In the area that I live in, we are considered low wealth. We're very rural, very poor. It's hard for us to be able to keep up with all of the changing tech needs out there, as opposed to more of the affluent counties on the coast. Is there consideration made into that? I'm not sure. I can't really tell. There's no discount for us in the mountains as opposed to those, on the coast. It's just kind of this is what we're expecting you to use, make it happen. And that takes away a lot of the autonomy from us as leadership, our admin, and our teachers, as well as what's going on in their classrooms.
And, I don't know that if we mentioned that you're in North Carolina, we
Mhm.
kept talking about Burke County,
Yeah.
but that's North Carolina.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so I was thinking about, how much control teachers have over what they use in their classroom. Um,
Mhm.
and it sounds like not as much. If the district is suffering the kinds of things that you're talking about,
Correct.
then teachers, like, how much more so?
Correct. Absolutely. And that's kind of where we're at this junction in the road. And with that resolution, we have pulled back, not in tandem with the state. We kind of deviated. We went a little rogue and said, you know what, we're going to return that autonomy back to the teachers. How that looks is how that looks in their classroom. And so we've given them that freedom here in Burke County. And so much so that it has prompted a visit from our state superintendent, DPI, as well as the State Board of Education, which will be later this month, because we did deviate. And that was the ability our board had found that we had, and we decided to use that. So we are kind of the test pilot in the state that has said, you know what, we understand what you're recommending. Um, we're not gonna kind of adhere to that any longer. We're gonna go ahead and return that power back to the teachers, and what that looks like in the classroom is what that looks like in the classroom. So we'll see. It's
Mm-hmm.
still moving. It's still ongoing. We'll see how
Mm-hmm.
much trouble we get into.
And there are other districts, if I remember correctly, one in like Raleigh, is it that I don't remember the specific
I wonder
district.
if you're talking about Granville.
Yeah, I think so. I guess what I'm saying though is you're not alone anymore in North
No, so we
Carolina.
have some jumping on board that are kind of kicking up dirt too, saying that we're going to follow. Granville, I know, has started a pilot where they are going tech free completely on certain days of the week each week. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's no tech on campus, period. That's
Mm-hmm.
instruction, that's cell phones, that's computers. So there's more join in the fight,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully.
Well, that's good. I mean, that'll
Yes,
help you with the state, I would imagine.
yes.
Yeah. Um, so I was thinking about governance challenges that are inherently posed by the digital platforms. And, you know, I mean, whose vision of education is being realized in the classroom? I think that's a really big question. Because, legally, according to FERPA, this school has direct control um, over the company that's declared a school official.
Mhm.
But that's not really true, right? I mean, it's a legal fiction. You have no idea how anything is programmed, right?
Correct.
So you don't know what it's doing. You don't have direct control. I mean, I think if the Department of Education was going to do its job, every school would be called on a FERPA violation.
Mhm.
And so then, going back to the kinds of things that we were talking about earlier, it's like corporate visions
Mhm.
that of what education is supposed to be that are being implemented.
Correct.
Or, somebody decides that mastery learning is what's going to be. They decide that what's measured in terms of student learning is what can be measured via a computer. You don't have any control over that. And the rationale behind so many of these platforms is personalizing learning. And that brings up, all kinds of questions. Personalization's based on data, but
Mhm.
which data? Who
Mhm.
decides? What's important? Who decides how it's analyzed, or how it's presented? Um, so an example that came up in my research was this program called Zern, which provides math curriculum. And, it's a standards aligned math curriculum. That's great. Um, but teachers and administrators can't determine the quality of the alignment, the degree of the alignment. That's all hidden in the programming. So you just don't know. And the adaptive data processes um, that determine how content is sequenced or how students are assessed, how mastery is determined, that's all hidden. Um, and then uh, this idea of personalized learning, it sounds really great on the one hand to cater to the individuality of every student. And, at some level you want to do that. But when you're doing it through um, a digital platform, and you can personalize in all kinds of ways as a teacher. But in order to collect data, you got to do it through a digital platform. Um, that personalization introduces an idea of um, teaching that is individual and linear. It's a student and their computer. Um, and that might not be the vision you have of education in your district. And I thought it was so interesting that you said earlier that you got calls saying, is this what you stand for?
Mhm.
Um, like,
Mhm.
as far as the parents know, whatever you do is what you stand for. But that's really not the case because you're not determining it. Um,
Absolutely. And I wouldn't even call it, they like to use the term personalized. None of it's personalized. It's all, I would call it a pathway. So where a student would maybe come in and they're being assessed to at a lower level than their peers. The curriculum that they're getting isn't personalized to Tyler at all. It's that
mhm,
Tyler has been bumped down to pathway A, pathway B. So it's not unique to the student. Um, it's just another pathway that they have implemented into the software that still keeps that student linear with whatever curriculum that they have in place through that software.
mhm. I wonder um, if you could talk a little bit about the equity concerns
Absolutely.
that come up.
So like I said, we are a low wealth, very poor. I think our median household income here around 37 between 37 to 41,000 a year. Um I think it's pretty presumptuous of an entity or the state to think that every home has a home computer in it. So when they're implementing these softwares, especially when it's tied to something like homework or maintaining communication with this your student's teacher, there's a lot of people that I meet out here who don't even have phones, you know? So there's a lot of equity concerns where we're just widening that gap because we have went so digital. Whereas those who are, again, coastal, in North Carolina, the coast is the money. They're fine. They're able to buy the biggest and the best. Those kids have MacBooks. Those kids have iPads. Where we are using Chromebooks from 2019 that break and don't fully operate, or half the screen is black, and we don't have the money to replace them. Again, the default answer is, well, they can do the homework at home. How do we know that the parents have Wi-Fi? Do we know that they have internet? We're in a really, really hard time as a country economically. So to assume that people have the money or the means to afford connectivity, that the student even has a place to set up the computer, that the kid has power that night to charge their device. We're just widening that gap, you know? So there's a lot of equity concerns that I feel are not being considered when creating these policies or looking to use tech as a way to propel America's education forward.
So what do you do? I mean,
So
you're in
what
a
we
very
have
difficult
did
position.
We are. So what we've had to do, especially as many of you guys know, Hurricane Helene hit us last year. What we've had to do is purchase like Wi-Fi vans. Wi-Fi vans where we'll go out to, very, very rural areas of the county and we'll set up and the kids can come to the van and um plug in their device and connect to our Wi-Fi and we'll have one posted on the East End and the West End and then the Central District so that they have that connectivity. But again, those are costs that the district is absorbing, that the state isn't reimbursing us for. The federal government isn't reimbursing us for. And sometimes that doesn't even work. I mean, we have a lot of trees and everything like that here where sometimes the it's not easy to connect or it's spotty or whatever's going on. Um, so we've tried. I mean, sometimes we've opened up our school gyms for kids to come in and do homework. But I mean, you see how this sounds?
Yeah.
We've created a problem that we can't really address, and so we're trying to, I call it a band-aid, band-aid it, so that we're meeting these thresholds that I don't even really think are necessary. So I mean, we've tried with what little we have to make this work for the students that we have, especially those who do not have the means to do so themselves.
And you mentioned the hardware,
Mhm.
that you you've got computers that really need to be replaced that aren't being replaced, and what kind of costs are involved?
Oh, so much money. Because you have to have the computers and the devices, and then of course with that you have to charge the insurance fee for if the kids accidentally damage it. That creates a economic hardship for a lot of our parents. Some of these, things aren't built to last nowadays. I just bought my cell phone 3 years ago and it's already starting to fritz on me. So we're having to replace these devices every year. Not all of them, but there's a cohort that goes out that we have to replace each year that's just reoccurring. And we don't get additional money for that. We have to figure that out with our local board of commissioners, um, and stuff. So it creates an economic hardship for us, oftentimes.
And it seems that there would be trade-offs that you're making.
Mhm.
Um, do you find, I mean, is it explicit in, because where I go in my head is, well, if you've got to be spending money on the computer infrastructure and insurance and then contracts and devices, then it's teachers that, that it'll end up being coming out in personnel. Um, is that explicit in your district?
It's I would say explicit and implicit. So we as the governing body over the budget, we can kind of see and tell where we've had to replace a few more Chromebooks this year than usual. We'll have to pull back on, catering for our in-service for teachers. And it's little things like that you start to see start to impact that funding. Additional teacher development where we may have been able to send a couple teachers off to DC or Colorado, or I see Kansas on the screen, or, Turo, where we could send them for professional development. We may not be able to send as many, or we may have to skip that for this year because we're having to move money from this pot to that. It all connects. So sometimes you can see it blatantly, and then other times we're feeling the hurt um implicitly.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really important thing to point out. Another thing that I was thinking is that there are equity impacts of datafication.
Mhm.
Um, because the data that's being collected that you don't exactly know what's being collected or how it's being used or where it's going is it's like everything is the permanent record now,
Hmm.
right? And it's not just your permanent record in school, it's your permanent record in life. And so how uh, how you are as a child can then influence um, all kinds of things later on, and we get concerned about tracking, right? And kids being blocked out of certain opportunities or being offered certain opportunities. But with the datafication and the fact that this information leaves the school, that the tracking is individual,
Hmm.
right? And so um, that information can go to law enforcement, it can go to insurance companies, um, all kinds of places that, we're not thinking about. And so just putting everything
Hmm.
into data leads to equity concerns. Um, and you can't identify the bias that's in the system um, because it's in the programming. Um, and then, to open up another um, I don't know, another ball of wax. There's the whole introduction of large language models into platforms, and the the bias that can occur with that introduction. On the one hand, it's something that's known, right? On the other hand, it's completely unknown. So when I look at the state or federal guidelines about how AI should be introduced into schools and used in schools. There's so often instruction that the end user has to be very careful to vet the output to see
Hmm.
if there's any bias because we know that that's a problem. Um, but how do you know, right? So there are platforms that do, for instance, IEPs.
Hmm.
It could spit one out. At Georgetown, they did a study looking at IEPs. I know Magic School AI was one of the programs that they looked at, and then there was another one whose name that I'm not remembering at the moment. And what they found when they explicitly gave the program the sex of the child is that the IEP was biased based on the sex. But it wasn't the kind of thing that you would notice if you're a teacher who's just, or a school who's just like spitting out an IEP, right? The kinds of differences that show up when you're doing a controlled experiment aren't the kind of thing that you would see, that you would understand and pick up on in any given instance. And um, so I really worry about that. Um,
It's a valid concern. I have many, many thoughts on AI and what that means in education, specifically teacher colleges and um, how we're preparing that next gen to step in, take lead.
Mhm.
We're starting to see it now as very problematic, especially when we're hiring beginning teachers.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
For sure. So, one of the things that was highlighted as we rolled out this resolution, because we started over the summer, brought all the teachers in, hey, this is the direction the district's going. We noticed that veteran teachers were super excited. Oh my gosh, this is how it used to be. I'm really excited to kind of get back hands-on with my students. A lot of blank stares from our beginning teachers, those who just came out of college and having one-on-one conversations with them, getting with a couple of our instructors and teacher colleges here in at UNC and things like that, App State. Um, a lot of them are being taught in college to teach digitally. And so when we put the ask out there to start kind of reverting back, pulling back, reducing, they had no idea what we were talking about, what that meant. You mean doing a lesson plan by hand? Who does that? So it resulted in a lot of remediation on our part through our instructional coaches, our directors of secondary ed, elementary ed, on getting with these beginning teachers and teaching them how to teach with reduced tech. So it's become quite problematic, especially here in the workforce as we're trying to roll them out into the schools. So more effort and energy we're exerting due to tech that I don't think a lot of people realize comes with it.
Mm. And I know there's some people in this room who are involved in teacher education. I mean, what would you ask of teacher education programs?
Absolutely. I am all for partnerships, relationship building, collaboration. Teacher colleges are exceptionally important, especially in my field, because this is who's turning out our pipeline. This is turning out our workforce. I think there should be greater collaboration between local boards of ed, K through 12, and the teachers' colleges. I think there's a lot of information that can be gleaned from us here at the Board of Education level about how they're being taught. Is there anything in our hiring process that we could improve on? And then conversely, the teacher college is learning this is what it actually looks like. This is what the standards are currently being implemented as. You know, this can make your students more competitive. If App State were to come on down and ask me, can you kind of hone in on teaching without tech? Because for this district, that's where we're going. And the students that we're getting are kind of looking at us like deer in headlights because they're like, we don't know what this means. What do you mean, again, writing a lesson plan by hand, no AI? I don't know where to begin with that. Um, I think that collaboration should be strengthened um, across the board, not just here in North Carolina, but just as the nation, because we get teachers from all over the place. Um, there's opportunity for strength and collaboration and relationships between those two entities, I think.
Awesome. Um, so first of all, I really, really appreciate this conversation. Um, and then I suspect I saw a whole bunch of things going through in the chat that I couldn't pay attention to because I was focusing on what you were saying. But I know that people have questions. So I know, Michael, I saw your name a lot. I saw Chris. Do you guys have questions that you want to share or thoughts? Mm, okay, nobody?
Oh, sure. Hi, I'd like to ask my question about the cell phone bans. Tian, thank you so much for being with us today. This was really interesting to hear your perspective as a parent, school board member, and chair. Um, and you had mentioned, I think there was a district or another setting where they did have a cell phone ban as part of it, but I've seen those policies kind of sweeping around a lot of different states. And I was curious how you all were thinking about screen time for instruction versus cell phones and that kind of whole range of digital devices.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to be here. This is awesome. I can't wait to take all of this back to my board. But yeah, so Granville County, North Carolina is the district that has rolled out the Tech Free Tuesday, Tech Free Thursday. And that's just really wide sweeping. I believe I do have information on that. I can put my information in the chat, email me, and I can send that over to you so you can take a look at it. Where I'm at here in Burke County is that we have a cell phone policy that says that phones are not to be out during instructional time. Well, we've had this in place for about 2 to 3 years now, and what we started to run into are the kids saying, "Well, it's my cell phone," things like that. If you confiscate the phone, we had it in policy to where the parent would have to be the one to come and retrieve that phone. Well, sometimes, more times than not, the parent's response is, well, I bought the phone. My kid can do whatever they want with it. You're not going to take it. So a lot of this is leading to discipline. It's not just because we want people off their phones. It's leading to a lot of discipline issues we're seeing, with the social media, the cyberbullying during school hours. School's supposed to be a safe haven for everyone. It's supposed to be a safe environment and conducive to learning. And so, this last meeting, feel free to go and watch our board meeting. I kind of went off on a tangent. Um, I put everyone on notice as a district that this is their probationary year. This is their year to prove to me that we can enforce and adhere to our policy, cell phone policy, as it is written. If we get to May of 2026 and we are still seeing the same issues, there will be a total ban across the entire district where you will not be able to have a cell phone at the beginning of school through all the way until the last bell rings. And there will be consequences that will be tacked on to that. I mean, maybe the first time is a in-school suspension, second time out of school suspension, a couple days of suspension. I don't know, but I do know, and I just got a text this morning from a teacher saying, I am spending more time addressing behaviors, addressing putting the cell phones away than I am teaching. That to me is a cry for help. It's my responsibility to figure that out. And so I'm not above a ban. That's just, I'm not. So that's
Looks
that.
like Gail has a question, and it'll probably be the last one, and then Stanley's gonna shove us over to the breakout rooms. Um,
Yes, thank you. I'm Gail Sunderman. I'm in Maryland. Um, Going back to some of the early conversation around how these platforms are designed, how much control they have. And my thought was, are there any regulations, laws around, trying to shape what they can do, what they can't do, because, they are infringing on a lot, it seems to me. So that's my question.
it's really very minimal,
Mhm.
very, very minimal. I mean, there are some laws about student data privacy. That's how I got into this whole mess, was when I first started seeing state laws about student data privacy and noticing that if a if a program was providing personalized learning, then it was exempt from the law. Then that made me kind of start digging into, like, what is personalized learning anyway, so really any company that says it's providing personalized learning can get out of the kinds of laws that are established to protect students. Um, it's a little it's a little backwards.
Mhm. Thank you.
So we are gonna go in another minute or two into our breakout rooms for conversation. And I just wanted to remind us all that one of the goals is for us to chat. Another goal is to think about briefs that NEPC could possibly commission in our upcoming cycle. We just released a brief on digital platforms. So it wouldn't be as straightforward as that, but there might be other things that come out of this discussion that that we can move into. And I really appreciate being here. Thank you very much. And T, I think we're splitting up for a while, so hopefully I'll see you this afternoon in the next session. But it was really great talking with you.
It was great being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.